Who can resist a classic shirt dress, especially one with so many options? In today's tutorial, we'll be sewing the beautiful Delaney shirt dress from Violet Field Threads. I'll be making the short sleeve version with a circle skirt in a cheerful daisy print cotton. We'll go step by step through the collar, plackets, pockets, and finishing details so that you'll feel confident sewing whichever version you choose. And if you love coordinating looks, you'll be happy to know that the Delaney is also available in children's and tween sizes, making it perfect for matching outfits. Let's get started. Here is my back bodice piece, and I've transferred the darts onto the wrong side of the fabric. Now I'm going to pin the darts in place. Sew the darts from the bottom to the point, leaving thread tails at the point so you can tie them in knots. Then we'll press those back darts toward the center back. Here is one of my front bodice pieces, and I've transferred the darts for the bust and the waistline, and I'll pin those in place. Then we'll sew these darts in the same way as we did for the back bodice, from the outer edges to the point and tying the dart point ends. Press the bust dart downward, press the waist dart toward the side seam. Repeat to create the darts for both front bodice pieces. Place the front and back bodice pieces right sides together at the shoulder seams and pin in place. Sew the shoulder seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, finish the raw edges together, and press the seams toward the back bodice piece. Fold and press the sleeve band piece wrong sides together. Place the sleeve band right sides together with the bottom of the sleeve aligning the raw edges and pin in place. Sew the band to the sleeve with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, finish the raw edges together, and I'm going to press that seam up toward the sleeve. Repeat to create both sleeves. Along the tops of both sleeves, we're going to sew easing stitches using the longest stitch on your machine from outer notch to outer notch with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Place the sleeve right sides together with its corresponding armhole and pin in place. Pulling the basting stitches will help ease the material into the armhole so that it fits perfectly. You'll be forming very slight gathers that will not be visible from the outside once it's sewn. Repeat on both sides for both sleeves. Then we'll sew both of the sleeves in place slowly and carefully so that you don't catch any puckers with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now both of the sleeves are attached, and I've gone ahead and finished the raw edges together for both sleeves. With the front and back bodice pieces right sides together and the sleeves also right sides together, pin the side seams on both sides. Then we can sew the side seams and underarm seams on both sides with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, finish the raw edges together, and press the seam toward the back of the garment. Finish the outer raw edges for each of your pocket pieces. Also finish each of the side seams where the pockets will be installed. Measure down 2 inches from the top raw edge of the skirt along the finished seam and make a mark. Place the top of the pocket right sides together at the marking and pin the side of the pocket in place. Sew the pocket to the skirt with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once the pocket is sewn in place, turn the pocket over its seam allowance. And we're going to understitch the pocket, sewing the pocket to the seam allowance underneath with about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Repeat that entire process to create both front pockets as well as to attach both of the remaining pockets to the back skirt piece. Place a front skirt piece right sides together with the back skirt piece along its side seam. With the front and back skirts and their pockets right sides together, pin the side seam and the edges of the pocket. Repeat on both sides of the skirt to attach the opposite front skirt piece to the back skirt piece. Then we'll sew as pinned, sewing the side seam around the pocket to the bottom of the garment with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Here is the center of my joined front and back skirt pieces with the right side facing me. Place the bottom edges of your bodice right sides together with the top of the skirt and pin in place all the way around, aligning the side seams. Sew the bottom of the bodice to the top of the skirt from center front to center front with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Finish the raw edges together, then press that seam up toward the bodice. Before I begin attaching the placket to the front of the dress, I'm going to apply interfacing that's half the width of the placket, applying it to the wrong side of the fabric. Place the placket right sides together with the center front of the dress and pin in place. Sew the placket to the front of the dress from top to bottom with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once the placket is sewn in place, turn it over its seam allowance and give it a good press. So here is the inside of the dress with that placket pressed over its seam allowance. And I've also gone ahead and pressed the outer edge of the placket to the wrong side by a 1/2 inch from top to bottom. We're going to take that folded edge of the placket and place it over the seam line so that the folded edge of the placket now covers our stitches. Press in place. I'm going to sew that folded edge of the placket in place from the right side of the garment, stitching in the ditch of the main placket seam line. Do this from the top to the bottom, and we're going to stop our stitches 3 inches from the bottom raw edge. Repeat the exact same process on the other side to form the opposite placket. I've applied interfacing to the wrong side of one of my collar pieces. Now I'm going to place them right sides together and pin the outer edges. Sew the outer edges of the collar with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Trim the seam allowance by 1/2. Turn this collar piece right side out and give it a good press. Here are both of my collar stand pieces. I've applied interfacing to the wrong side of one piece, and for the other piece I've pressed that bottom raw edge to the wrong side by 1/2 inch all the way across. Mark the center of the bottom of the collar as well as the 2 collar stand pieces. We're going to place our collar stand pieces right sides together with the collar in between, aligning the raw edges. Also align those centers and pin in place. Sew as pinned with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, starting at the bottom of the folded edge of your inner collar stand piece. Trim this seam allowance using pinking shears if you have them. Turn the collar stand right side out. Place the unfolded raw edge of your collar stand right sides together with the bodice neckline, from center front to center front, and pin in place. Sew that one side of the collar stand in place from one side to the other with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Trim your new seam, once again using pinking shears if you have them. Then we'll press that trim seam up toward the neckline, and we'll place the folded edge of the opposite collar stand over the main seam line. Now that the bottom of the collar stand is pressed in place, you can also add pins if you like. Then from the front of the garment, I'm going to stitch in the ditch of that collar stand seam in the same way as we did for the button placket, stitching from one center front to the other. Continue top stitching along the upper edge of the collar stand, as well as the entire upper and side edge of the collar piece. Here is my back facing piece and its 2 short edges. Place both of your front facing pieces right sides together with the back facing and pin the short edges. Sew both of those short seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and press the seams open. Along the inner upper curve of the facing all the way across, I'm going to finish those raw edges with my serger. Then I'll take this piece to the iron and flip those upper finished edges to the wrong side by a 1/4 of an inch and give it a good press. Here are the bottom edges of the skirt of my dress. I'm going to place the facing right sides together with the bottom raw edges, aligning the raw edges and the side seams and pinning in place. As we approach the center front, open up the unfolded portion of the placket so that we don't catch this bottom inner portion of the placket as we sew this seam. Starting from one side of the facing, all the way to the opposite side of the facing, and the facing should extend into the placket by just a little bit, by about 1/2 of an inch. Trim this bottom seam allowance all the way across to 1/8 of an inch. Then we can turn the entire facing to the inside of the garment and press that new finished edge nice and crisp all the way across. Now along the inside of the dress with your folded inner edge still pressed under, pin in place all the way across. As you approach both of the center fronts and the unsewn portion of the placket, tuck the bottom edge of the placket to the inside by a 1/2 of an inch so that you have a nice finished bottom edge which aligns with the finished bottom edge of the facing, and pin in place. Do the same on both center fronts. Then from the front of the garment, I'm going to finish the facing stitches to the bottom to close that 3-inch portion that we left open earlier. Then on the inside, I'm going to sew close to the upper inner edge of the facing all the way across the bottom of the skirt. Now we're ready to sew the buttonholes into the right placket piece. The first buttonhole will be about a 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch below the collar stand seam. And each of your next buttonholes going down the placket will be about 2 to 3 inches apart depending on your preference. Make your markings. Then sew each of your buttonholes in place. Sew each of your buttons in place across from their buttonholes. And now the dress is complete. Thank you for watching this sew along. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming sewing tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.